The film begins with the legend of Princess Moana of the underworld. She dreamed of blue skies, warm sunshine, and the gentle breeze above, so she escaped her guardians and ventured into the mortal world. But upon emerging, the sunlight blinded her and erased her memories. Forgetting who she truly was, she suffered through sickness and pain before eventually dying. Yet her father, the king, believed that one day she would find her way back. In 1944, years have passed, and Ofelia, a young girl who loves fairy tales and deeply believes in fairies and fantasy, travels with her pregnant but sickly mother, Carmen, to live with Carmen's new husband, a ruthless Francoist officer named Captain Vidal. Along the way, Carmen asks to stop because she suddenly feels dizzy. While resting, Ofelia wanders into the forest, where she discovers a strange stone lying on the ground. She soon realizes it is the missing eye of a nearby statue, and when she places it back, an insect suddenly emerges from the stone. Amazed by the creature, Ofelia believes it to be a fairy, until her mother calls her back to continue their journey. Ofelia disagrees with her mother's decision to live with Vidal, but Carmen insists, even asking her to treat the captain as her father. Shortly after, they arrive at the mill, where Captain Vidal and his men warmly welcome them, including Dr. Ferrero, the physician assigned to care for Carmen. Vidal appears unusually attentive toward her and even provides a wheelchair for her comfort. But when Ofelia steps out of the car, he subtly tightens his grip after she offers the wrong hand for a handshake. Not long after, Ofelia spots the strange insect again and follows it toward an ancient labyrinth near the house. Drawn by curiosity, she slowly ventures inside, but before she can go any farther, Mercedes, one of Captain Vidal's most trusted maids, calls her back. When night falls, Dr. Ferrero visits Carmen and gives her medicine to help her sleep. After leaving the room, he quietly speaks with Mercedes and secretly hands her antibiotics meant for an unknown man. Mercedes is startled when Ofelia suddenly sees them together, but the young girl says nothing and quietly returns to her room. As the night deepens, the strange insect appears once again, and as Ofelia describes what she believes a fairy should look like, the creature slowly transforms into a real fairy before her eyes. Guided by the fairy, Ofelia follows it back to the labyrinth, where they eventually reach its center. There, she carefully descends a long staircase leading into a hidden chamber, where she encounters a mysterious faun. The faun explains that Ofelia is the reincarnation of Princess Moana, and that the labyrinth is the last portal in the world created by her father for her return. He then gives her a magical book that will reveal what must be done, before explaining the 3 tasks she must complete to prove she is still worthy of returning to the underworld. However, he warns her to only open the book when she is alone. Later, Ofelia opens the book out of curiosity, only to discover that all of its pages are blank. But when she looks back for the faun, he has already vanished into the darkness. Morning arrives, and everyone at the mill busies themselves preparing for the banquet hosted by the captain. The maids work tirelessly preparing food, while Carmen readies warm water for Ophelia's bath. Excited, her mother proudly shows her the elegant dress she made for her to wear later that night. Inside the bathroom, Ofelia opens the mysterious book once again, and this time the pages are no longer blank. But before she can explore it further, Carmen calls her out, urging her to hurry so she can try on the dress. After bathing, Mercedes offers Ofelia a glass of milk, which she happily accepts. While collecting milk from a cow, Ofelia excitedly tells Mercedes about the fairy and the faun she encountered the night before. Mercedes quietly warns her about fauns, but before she can explain further, Captain Vidal calls for her assistance in the storage room. Not long after, Vidal notices smoke rising in the distance and suspects nearby rebels are responsible. He and his men quickly ride out to investigate, but upon arriving, they find the area abandoned. The only things left behind are a bottle of antibiotics and a lottery ticket. Meanwhile, Ofelia follows the instructions written in the magical book and discovers her first task. She must feed enchanted stones to a giant toad living inside an ancient tree and retrieve the key hidden within its belly. Without hesitation, Ofelia crawls into the hollow tree, slowly pushing through thick mud as large insects crawl across her body. Though disgusted, she continues deeper until she finally reaches the monstrous toad. Showing no fear, she introduces herself as Princess Moana. Using the insects gathered in her hand, she hides the magical stones among them as bait. The toad greedily swallows them, causing it to violently vomit its insides along with the key hidden within its stomach. Having completed the grotesque task, Ofelia returns home covered in mud. The banquet soon begins, and during dinner, Captain Vidal speaks about the rebels they nearly captured earlier that day, mentioning that the only things they found were a bottle of antibiotics and a lottery ticket. Dr. Ferrero and Mercedes exchange worried looks the moment they hear this. As the guests continue eating, Carmen begins telling the story of how she and Vidal first met, but the captain quickly cuts her off, clearly irritated by the story. To him, it makes their relationship sound too ordinary, something that clashes with the powerful and authoritative image he desperately wants to maintain in front of his guests. Not long after, Carmen abruptly leaves the banquet when Ofelia suddenly arrives covered in dirt and mud. She follows her daughter into the bathroom and scolds her for being careless, especially after all the effort she put into making the dress for her. Later that night, after cleaning herself up, Ofelia returns to the labyrinth and presents the key to the faun. However, he tells her to keep it for now, explaining that she will need it for the next task. He then gives her a piece of magical chalk and reminds her that only 2 tasks remain before the coming full moon. In the morning, Captain Vidal distributes food rations to the townspeople who carry food stamps, while Ofelia quietly slips into the bathroom to check the magical book and discover what will happen next. But when she opens it, a blood-like stain suddenly spreads across the pages. Alarmed, she rushes back to her mother's room, only to discover that Carmen is bleeding heavily. Panicked, Ofelia immediately calls for Captain Vidal. Dr. Ferrero quickly treats Carmen and warns that she desperately needs rest. He advises Captain Vidal that Ofelia should stay in a separate room for the time being, and also suggests that he remain at the mill to closely monitor Carmen's worsening condition. That night, the maids prepare a new room for Ofelia, as the doctor instructed, but she remains deeply worried about her mother. Mercedes gently comforts her and explains Carmen's condition. During their conversation, Ofelia quietly asks if Mercedes is helping the rebels. Mercedes grows uneasy, but Ofelia reassures her that she will never tell anyone because she does not want her to get hurt. Later that same night, Mercedes and Dr. Ferrero secretly sneak out to meet the rebels. It becomes clear that aside from caring for Carmen, Dr. Ferrero stayed at the mill to help treat one of the wounded resistance fighters. Deep within the forest, they are picked up by Pedro, Mercedes' brother, before heading to the rebels' hidden camp, where they immediately prepare an operation to amputate the injured man's leg in order to stop the infection from spreading. Meanwhile, the faun appears before Ofelia once again, and first hands her a mandrake root that can help cure her mother's illness, instructing her to place it in a bowl of fresh milk and feed it with 2 drops of blood every morning. He then explains Ophelia's second task, warning her never to eat any food she may encounter along the way. Before leaving, the faun gives her an hourglass and reminds her that she must return before the last grain of sand runs out. Ofelia wastes no time and begins her next task. Using the magical chalk, she draws a doorway and enters a strange corridor guided by 3 fairies. At the end of the hall, they discover a terrifying monster sitting motionless before a feast, with its eyes resting on a plate. The fairies point to the middle door, but Ofelia chooses the one on the left instead, and luckily finds the dagger hidden inside. As she prepares to leave, Ofelia becomes tempted by the food on the table. Despite the fairies' repeated warnings, she eats a few grapes, awakening the monster. Slowly, the creature places its eyes into its palms and rises from its seat. The fairies try to stop it, but the monster devours 2 of them alive. Ofelia narrowly escapes, but when the doorway closes, she quickly draws another one on the ceiling using the broken chalk, preventing the monster from following her. As morning arrives, Ofelia immediately follows the faun's instructions and prepares the mandrake root. She places it beneath her mother's bed and feeds it 2 drops of her own blood. She nearly gets caught hiding under the bed when Dr. Ferrero and Captain Vidal suddenly enter Carmen's room. They are surprised to see that Carmen's condition is improving, but Vidal coldly states that if they are forced to choose, they should save the baby and let Carmen die. While they are talking, Vidal suddenly hears an explosion in the distance and immediately rushes out with his men. They discover that the rebels have bombed a train, though strangely, nothing was stolen from it. Confused and enraged, Vidal then hears another explosion coming from the direction of the mill. They quickly return and discover that the storage room has been raided, and nearly all of the supplies are gone. Upon examining the padlock, Vidal realizes it was opened with a key rather than forced open. Some rebels are still nearby, and after capturing one of them, Vidal brutally tortures the man for information about his companions. That night, the faun visits Ofelia once again and asks about the second task. Filled with guilt over what happened, she tries to explain herself, but the remaining fairy reveals her disobedience. Furious, the faun declares that she will never return to the underworld and will instead remain among humans forever. Elsewhere, Captain Vidal finishes torturing the captured rebel and orders Dr. Ferrero to treat the man so they can extract more information from him later. While waiting for the doctor, Vidal notices a bottle of antibiotics inside Ferrero's luggage, the exact same kind they previously found at the rebels' camp. Suspicious, he carefully examines it and confirms it is the same medicine. Just as Vidal is about to leave, he hears a noise upstairs. He enters Carmen's room and discovers Ofelia hiding beneath the bed beside the mandrake root, dismissing it as childish fantasy. Carmen, disturbed by the creature, throws the mandrake root into the fire, and almost immediately, her illness begins to return. Meanwhile, the captured rebel begs Dr. Ferrero to end his suffering, and the doctor quietly grants his request. When Captain Vidal returns to the storage room and finds the prisoner dead, Vidal confronts him, but understanding they have already been compromised, the doctor calmly walks away. Without hesitation, Captain Vidal follows him and shoots him dead. Carmen's condition suddenly worsens, forcing an emergency childbirth. Captain Vidal quickly calls for the troop's paramedic and orders him to handle the operation. Carmen successfully gives birth to a healthy baby boy, but tragically, she loses her life during the delivery. Realizing that her identity has been exposed, Mercedes immediately decides to flee. Before escaping, she visits Ofelia to say goodbye, but the young girl begs to come with her. On a stormy night, the two quietly escape and hurry through the forest, hoping to reach the rebels' camp before they are found. But unknown to them, Captain Vidal and his men are already tracking their trail, and before long, they catch up to both of them. Captain Vidal locks Ofelia inside her room and orders his men to kill her immediately if anyone attempts to rescue her, while Mercedes is held captive inside the storage room. Vidal prepares to torture her for information about the rebels, but Mercedes slowly reaches for the knife she always keeps hidden beneath her clothes. Without warning, she stabs Vidal in the back, then plunges the blade into his chest before slashing his mouth open. Mercedes quietly slips past the guards, but Vidal manages to stumble outside and orders his men to capture her. She desperately runs uphill through the forest, but the soldiers on horseback quickly gain on her. Just as they are about to seize her, multiple gunshots suddenly erupt through the night, taking down one soldier after another until every one of them is dead. The rebels arrive just in time and rescue Mercedes before she can be captured again. Back at the mill, Ofelia loses hope until the last remaining fairy suddenly reappears, followed by the faun. Relieved, she embraces him as he offers her one final chance to complete the tasks, warning that she must obey without question this time. He then instructs her to bring her baby brother to the Labyrinth and gives her a magical chalk to create a doorway. Ofelia quickly takes action and sneaks into Captain Vidal's room while he is busy treating his wounds. Vidal notices the chalk left on the table and immediately suspects that someone else is in the room. But before he can investigate further, a soldier interrupts him with news of the ambush. Vidal rushes outside and discovers the devastating losses among his men. Meanwhile, Ofelia quietly makes her move to take her baby brother. She secretly mixes sleeping medicine into Vidal's drink, the same medicine that was once used by her mother. Vidal eventually returns to his room and drinks the whiskey laced with the sleeping medicine. Moments later, he sees Ofelia escaping with his baby son. Though the medicine quickly begins to affect him, he still manages to pursue her into the labyrinth. Ofelia reaches the chamber where the faun is already waiting. He immediately reveals the final task, explaining that to open the portal to the underworld, they need the blood of an innocent child. Without hesitation, Ofelia refuses. The faun grows angry, but she stands firmly by her decision, even if it means never returning to the underworld again. Captain Vidal reaches the chamber and sees Ofelia seemingly talking to no one. He takes the baby from her arms and shoots her without hesitation. As Vidal leaves the labyrinth, Mercedes and the rebels surround him outside. Defeated, he hands over the child and asks them to tell his son the exact time of his death. But Mercedes coldly replies that his son will never even know his name. Without another word, Pedro pulls the trigger, ending Vidal's life. Mercedes rushes into the chamber and finds Ofelia barely clinging to life as her blood slowly drips beneath the light of the full moon. As her life fades away, a bright light suddenly surrounds her, and she awakens in the underworld, where her mother and father await her alongside the faun and the citizens of their kingdom. There, her father explains that she passed the final task by choosing to sacrifice herself instead of harming an innocent child. The story then cuts back to the mortal world, where Ofelia quietly smiles as her life slowly fades away. Whether Ofelia truly returned to the underground kingdom or not remains a mystery. But through her courage and selfless sacrifice, her story became a timeless legend that would never be forgotten.